Welcome back to the Unbreakable Boundaries podcast with your host, myself, Jennifer Maneely. In today's episode, I wanted to talk about something that is really important when it comes to having a loved one with substance abuse issues in your life. And it's all about communication. How do we possibly communicate with someone that seems to be dead set on destroying their lives, right? That's what it feels like. And it can be really challenging to understand. I mean, I don't know if you've ever felt like this, but sometimes when I'm talking to someone that is in the midst of struggling with substance abuse issues, it just feels like I'm walking on eggshells all the time. Like everything that I say or do could possibly be misconstrued. I also know how hard it is to sit there and know that they're lying to you and not feel like you have to like point that out or get really angry. It can feel like you're talking to a brick wall because it just is like they're not getting it through their thick skull, right? And it can be a real challenge on how to approach and talk to someone who does seem like this, especially if you're a parent. And so I'm going to just talk mostly like to the parents right now. You know that you raised them to not behave like this, right? And so a lot of times what parents end up doing is feeling like they just have to keep raising their adult kids until indefinitely because they're obviously not getting the point. And you're like, no, 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 I cannot have you acting like this because it's somehow saying something about my parenting. Well, here's one of the good understandings right out the gate is that when they do reach adulthood, not whether they act like an adult or not, but when they reach up age, they're 18, they're out of the house. They should be out of the house. If they're still living with you, that's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother day. Uh, but as long as they're adults of 18, your role as a parent is over. So there can't be any more parenting. And so when you think about the way that you are communicating and your life is set up with your loved one of the things that you can ask yourself is, am I still in the parenting role? And if you are still in the parenting role, then we want to kind of look at how to do some things differently. Again, that's a much bigger topic. I'm just going to talk about communication today. How do we talk to them, right? But it kind of goes into that because if you're sitting there so busy continuing to raise them and they're sitting there fighting against you, it can be really hard and feel like you're just constantly beating your head against the wall. So one of the suggestions that I make to families that I work with is when we're having those conversations, if you've already said it once, you don't always have to say it repetitively, right? Because your loved one knows what they need to be doing. And so it's just a waste of breath and energy, and it shuts them down. I mean, I think you can see that. So every time you bring it up, it shuts them down. And if they're claiming and they're saying that, oh, yeah, you're totally right. I should be doing better. I'm totally going to be doing better. This is the last time. All of that stuff. That is mostly because they are bullshitting you. To be frank about it, is they're either trying to get something, they're trying to get out of trouble, they want something from you, or they just want to stop the conversation. It's not because they actually believe it. So, continue to go down that road where you feel like, let's just say they do open up and they're giving you some sob story or they're shedding a few tears saying, I'm going to do so much better. You're right. And all of those things. It's a manipulation tactic. So then how do we talk to them? What do we talk to them about? Well, what if we stop talking to them about how they should be living their life and what are some of the things that they really enjoy doing, right? Like, because they really need to feel like they have something else to talk about other than how bad they're living their lives. Because as long as we're talking about how bad they're living their lives or what they should be doing better and all of that stuff, it continues a shame cycle, right? It's like you're just hitting on all of those things that they already feel ashamed. Like maybe they don't feel good enough. Maybe they don't feel like they deserve it. Maybe there's just a whole lot of things. And so if we're constantly beating that topic into them, if we're constantly beating those conversations into them, then they constantly feel like every time you open your mouth, it's just going to hit on their shame buttons. And then eventually they don't really even want to talk to you at all. And that can be really hard to swallow because you're like, no, but you should listen to me because I'm your parent and I know what's best for you. And so I'm going to keep saying those things, but they already know. So if you really want to like communicate with them and talk to them and have real conversations, another recommendation that I make is keep the conversations in the space of having a normal conversation, things that they enjoy, and not the interrogating questions either. Well, what are you doing? How are you spending your money? Where is this going to? How are you getting by? What are you going to do with your life? Is this the kind of life that you want? Right? Like those kinds of questions can be hard for someone that shuts them down, and then they get upset, and then it's like everything that you say be past that, they're shut down. They don't want to talk to you. And so we can ask them questions though of things like, what do you enjoy? Keep the conversations short. So usually there's like a pattern of the conversations. Things go well for a few minutes and then things go off the rail. Well, what if we just kept the things go well for a few minutes? That piece. And that's it. Oh, okay. Well, oh, sorry, I have to go now. Enjoy your life. I don't know. Like you can get off the phone in like 5 minutes if you're talking to them on the phone. If you're talking to them in person, if they're around you, as long as the conversation is going well, but right around when the conversation's getting ready to turn, or it's like, hey, this is about when things go downhill, those conversations, maybe we figure out how to end them while they're still in that good place. And that can really help your loved one as well, because then they're going to feel more open to want to talk, right? And here's one of the things about communication that is also really important. If you're still in that parenting role, one of the challenges is how do we break free of that? So, when we're in that parenting role, they feel really rebellious. Have you noticed that? Like every time you go into that role, they feel like they want to just rebel against you. And here's what I can recognize. Everything that you are saying is absolutely right. Whatever it is, I know that what you're saying is right. So why do they keep rebelling? Well, because it's just part of their nature. And then all of a sudden we get to the point where it's like, they're so busy fighting against you that they can't even see that what you're saying is correct because they're so busy fighting against you. Now that they're so busy fighting against you and they can't allow you to be right and their ego is in the way, it's going to take them so much longer for them to see their life for what it really is. So really what we want is to steer clear of all of that and just keep the conversations kind of upbeat and not hitting on their shame cycle, right? And that can be really hard to understand and fine tune how those conversations can unintentionally be hitting on their shame cycle because you're like, listen, I just want to help you, right? And they get upset. Well, we have to understand it from how they're hearing things. And sometimes that can take a little work. And this is what a lot of times I work with the families one-on-one about is how maybe that can be perceived, and then how maybe we can transition some of those conversations into either not hitting on the shame buttons, into actually having real conversations, deep conversations, conversations that make you feel good, that make them feel good, good enough, right? Like, of course, you're still worried about them. They know that. You know that. We can't take away the worry, right? But we can have more and more good conversations to the point where they're starting to open up to us in order to, well, at some point when they really want help, they're going to feel a lot more comfortable coming and admitting that to you when they're ready. So anyway, I hope that this was really helpful. I know that some of it is a little like, well, how do I do that? And sometimes I just need a little bit more information on what are the conversations, how do they go right, and then what can we do to flip them. This is just kind of an overview. So if you're really wanting to dive into how do I really communicate with my loved one in an effective way, um, then I, as Jen, needs to hear more about those conversations and then what I can make recommendations and suggestions on. So please always feel free to get in touch with me. You can shoot me an email. It's jennifer@maniliconsulting.com. You can also just go to my website and actually just schedule a call. It's free. We can talk about this stuff. You can say, hey, I have a question, and I can help you answer that. So you can also go to my website, maniliconsulting.com, and go check that out. And I hope to hear from you soon.